Hello, this is Dr. Chris Lemmon, and this is January 2024, believe it or not. Uh, Easier for some people to believe it, but after you've been here for about 80 years, it's getting to be stranger and stranger. Um, in the past, what I started doing a long time ago, now everything's a long time ago. A long time ago, I had a center and I used to do a monthly talk, and I get 100 or plus people that would come to the talk. When I decided to do something different. So I packed up and hit the road and started doing lectures and talks in different parts of the United States. And as I moved around and I did seminars still, why there were people that would say, am I going to come back and talk? So I started a blog site so that I had a little bit of a blog, kind of a short page and a half that they could contact to. For the most part, they were trying to figure out what's working for them in life, and I think that's always the secret. Um, and so I wasn't there to do that, so I started a blog site, um, and then I got a lot of questions. Some people don't like really long blogs, 2-3 pages, so they like it short so they can read it and be done with it. But it seemed like they had a lot of questions. So I had a lot of questions. So I started YouTube videos in the very beginning to kind of answer questions. So I didn't have to repeat myself. I would get the same question 8, 9 times in a month. So I could just say, here, look at my YouTube. There's the answer. Made it simpler for me. And that was what I did at first with them. Um, and then as it progressed along, why there were certain answers that came up with blogs. And so I decided, wow, as I put this together, maybe I should attach uh, a YouTube video with the blogs so that it would, somebody wanted to sit there and listen to me ramble on for an hour and a half. Why, fine, there you go. That's otherwise I'm calling on the phone and talking to them for an hour and a half. And I'm doing that to 5 or 6 people, and I'm a lot of redundancy. So I'm trying to reduce redundancy. I think the world's trying to move away from the absolute, the rules, the structures, the redundancy, so that we can move in the direction of potential. That's the whole idea of modernity and maybe even post-modernity. So, and that is just kind of coming at an age where you don't seek an answer that's going to work for everybody. We're going to seek what works for a person. So it's kind of interesting. Anyway, um, these started materializing. I did a few webinars online because our friendly common ailment, why shut the world down. So I did a few seminars, and that was kind of interesting. But once again, it's got 30 or 40 people. I was used to having 100 to 200 people, so it's a little different approaching the audience. It's a little more of a challenge because when I'm communicating to someone, I'm being aware of the feedback of where they're going. I need to repeat an idea several different times so I have it framed in a way that clicks and then makes sense to you. Um, and so if I've got a group of people, I can most certainly do that. And if I don't have a group of people and just talking to this monitor, then I don't get that feedback. So I'm just bouncing ideas out. And I could read a book, but then you'd have to write a book, but then you'd have to find someone that would be willing to read the book. So it's like, um, so it's always a quagmire of trying to be a teacher and try to present ideas and concepts when the people are looking, the bulk of them are looking for it. Give me the absolute correct right way. Give me the secret, because we know there's a secret out there, whatever that secret is. Um, and they always would ask me, what do you believe in? All right. Um, and I used to always say, I believe in you, because that's the way I look at it. I look at your potential is what I believe in. Whatever facilitates you arriving at your potential will work well for you. Some other person's path or direction or focus doesn't necessarily work well for you. We might have packages that work well for a group of people, but it's usually because the group of people have developed a common bond in the group. So when I have 40 people at a seminar and we spent a weekend together, I've got to find a connective link to everybody, then can relate to that and say, wow, they can feel that what is expanding in them, an understanding, a development, a consideration. If you got them all together the next week, you'd find that they all had a different perception. I mean, we didn't have another seminar on the same topic the following week, but I would get people coming to conversations and they would say, thank you, you've given me the answer. And then the next person comes in and said, I've heard all this before, it doesn't work for me. Yeah, right. That's the way it is. It's not an absolute. There's not a rule. Um, we reached majority in the United States in 1950. I was born in the 40s. It's like I was born into this, where all of a sudden we were looking back and saying, having an absolute. I'm not anti-religion. I'm not anti-anything. I'm just saying the thinking has changed. The thinking has changed. It's moved in a direction where we don't have one size fits all. And we have to then look around and say, wow, does that mean that we're all going to have to do our own work? Yeah, I think so. Uh, otherwise, it probably won't work. If you adopt someone else's, I'm not saying you can't learn from someone. Most certainly you can. There's a lot of things that I learned. I learned to do sheetrock work from a friend of mine. I learned to do fly fishing from another friend of mine. I've learned a lot of things in life. I've learned to do pistol shooting from a friend of mine. All different people, all different modalities. I can do all those things today. I do lots of things. I always wanted to learn more things, right? And so I can do lots and lots of things. I don't do them the way they taught me. So you could say I'm doing them wrong. Well, okay, but I'm doing them the way I do them. Was theirs better or worse? Well, those work really well for them. I can barely speak, maybe. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's not enough coffee yet. It wasn't that the idea or the technique or the protocols were wrong. It's like, what we're seeing today in the new way of looking at it, moving away from absolute, we're finding out the new fact is that if somebody develops skill at one thing and then switches to a different thing, somebody develops skill with a musical instrument, switches to a different one, they become famous with the second one, but they tend to hold their fame or their skill set or their confidence in it, developing it, because of the fact that they've had diversity. Diversity seems to be the counter to absolute. If there's not one answer, try 10, 20, 40, 80, 6,275,000 things. Try those things and find out what works for you. And then once you find out what works for you, try something else and find out what works more for you. So in my teaching, I call that building range. Why should you be the best at wrestling? I wrestled for a year. I had a story, it's like that I got from the coach. I was tall and thin. So the guy in my weight class is short and well built. It's easy to take me down. I'm tall. He's short. He just kind of grabs me by the ankles and I fall down. Then I got to wrestle around him on the ground and he's compressed. Wrestling wasn't a good sport for me. Not that there wasn't tall people that did good. There were some big animals that were just gigantic and very strong, and they could just pick the little guy up and bounce him around. It's like, but that wasn't that guy. So was wrestling the answer? Well, I knew kids that got scholarship from wrestling. So my gosh, that was the answer. If they wanted to go to school, they got paid for it. That was a great answer, but it wasn't an answer for me. So I did not need to join the Church of Wrestling or the ideology of wrestling or whatever you want to do. I'm not anti anything. What I am is I'm anti when somebody says, this is what I do, and they keep it to that narrow range. because if you get to know them, they really do a lot of diversity. Um, I spent a day in Norway with a guy that was a photographer, and it's just like um, nothing that day was about photography. I mean, he's a world famous photographer, and now he's kind of retiring, and he's kind of now, you know, trying to help out the world. In other words, he's gained some range. But when I spent the day with him, it wasn't about photography. It was about what he enjoyed in life. It was about him bringing up. It's about his view of life. It's about uh, honoring society, and yet honoring as a launching point for potential, and not from a rule of like, we need to continue to be like we were in 50, 60, 70 years ago. No, he said, this is where we were. And now from there, we get to move forward. And he felt that the culture should have that arrow in time. Guys, move forward, do something. Uh, I was in India, and I was there for a couple of months. So I avoided the fancy hotels. I booked all my hotels for the trip kind of right next to the ghettos. So I wanted to see the diversity in the culture of India. And so I'm in a hotel, and there's tons of people that are pushing tours. And so in front of my hotel, there's a guy that comes up, and he said, I can take you over to a government agency that'll give you a map and all the sites to see. And then if you want to see one of those sites or do one of those things, you can go ahead and hire me to do it. And if you don't, I'll just bring you back to the hotel. I said, cool, that sounds good. So I went on over to that place. Well, it turned out it was not a government agency. It was just a tour company pretending to be a government agency. And yeah, they gave me a free city map. Big deal. And they had a whole list of things that they had tours for and prices, right? And he was one of their agents, obviously. So it was a pretense. And then when I went outside, he was gone. You know, it was like he wasn't going to take me back to the hotel. And I looked around, and I found him down the street a little bit. So I walked down the street, and I said, hey, where are you at? You said you'd take us back. So he wasn't real happy about that, but I called him out. So he said, sure. He said, you don't mind stopping on the way? I've got to see someone. I said, that's fine. So we pull up at a store that sells rugs, of course, you know, and he says, I got to run in and see this guy. You guys can look around while I got to talk to him. So he goes inside, goes out the back door, gets in his cab and takes off, of course, and now leaves us in a rug store. He dumped us in the pretense of, so this is a normal thing. Yeah. Do you understand? It's like, he's not looking, he's trying to utilize tourism. Oh, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That was great. It was obvious to me. It was like, I didn't pay him any money. We went to a rug shop, talked to the guy. They were really sweet people in buying rugs. And we left there. And the guy at the rug company says, no, it's just like, you're a block and a half from the hotel. You just walk down the corner, go. And I said, great. Where's a good place to eat? And he said, this is the best place in the area, I'll tell you. And so I got a lot of information out of the guy. You can turn anything into a potential. So what I've been doing is, as I said, when I first started blogging, then I started doing videos to answer questions. And then I had to do a few workshops because I couldn't get out and talk to people. And then I started making some more in-depth discussions on the topic I blogged. And then I abandoned that. Last year, we were working on building range up. Last 2 years, we're building range up, and we're trying to make it open, right? It's would be useless if I decided to become a painter and then read a book by one painter and decided I'm going to be a painter just like that person because they did it the right way. Then I would lose the potential of finding out how I would paint, because mine might be totally different. Now that might seem odd, but I have done some painting. I'm not very good, but it was fun. And I saw so many people that wanted to be the artists they were taking lessons from. I taught some martial arts, and it's kind of like I I saw people that wanted to be me. They didn't want to learn what they could do. They wanted to be me. Um, I was a teacher, and people come back and said, "Oh, you know the secret. Teach me." I go, "I think the secret's you." So that's what I know. I think the secret is you, and I'm putting things together for you to experience things, so you can find out what that secret is. You need to search around. You need to go through the box of goodies called your life and see what works for you. So uh, last year I talked about teaching because we had new ranges, and I'm saying don't fill those new ranges with something that's redundant. Open them up and explore potential. So here I was when I put together a seminars and training for 14 years. I had to sit down and said, what am I going to do? I don't want to teach what someone else does. I don't have any answers for anybody, but I can get a group of people together and we can have a conversation, and I can see what they're good at, and then I could support that. Now that would be fun. So that became my platform of teaching. And then whatever was bouncing around in there, I would then take the group and we'd march in that direction. And then you would see all this benefit come to them. They would have some skills, they'd have a little bit more understanding in life, they have a little more diversity, they would be healthier. All those things were possible. So last year, I just talked about how I filled the vacuum, the new space. I rented a building and I said, here's a building. Now I got to figure out what I'm going to do. Right. So I went in and I put up a sign and I said, yeah, come on in. And I just started talking and watching the people and feeding back to whatever was going on. And I developed this whole package of instructions that was right there in a bundle. That was part of the whole training program, seminar, all that all came out of that experience. And then I decided, okay, I'm done with that. So I turned it over to people there and said, okay, you guys like this? You want to do this? Go ahead. See you later. I'm gonna go do something different. And eventually I had to come back because they all fell apart. They all just, I don't know, they just got totally lost. So I had to come back and close it all down and then move on. And so I'm put those talks together last year so you could see an example of how you fill a space with potential, but you don't have to become that limitation. Every potential for you, when you push it to the end, at some point becomes a limitation. You got to go find something else to move on to, something else to play with. Yes, it's wonderful to do something and do it all your life and do it amazing and become an expert. But experts don't last very long. Someone excels past you in very short order. And then, wow, it's like, great. So when I was teaching firearms, I had a group of people that I put together, a team, and then we went into some championships, and it was kind of like they all shot as good as I or better. I was not the best on the team. My job as a team leader was to be able to support them and becoming much, much better. That I dropped out of the team and they went on to become national champions. I started it. Do you think I would want to ride that horse to the finish? But it was really clear to me. It's like all these guys who got better than me. I got better, but they got a lot better. So it's like, wow, that's interesting. I could make up stories about why they had more time to practice. They did this, they did that, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, that's all BS. The truth was they were all really good. So it's like, wow, So I stepped down and said, hey, you guys figure out who's your leader. I'm done. And there they go. And they ride it to success. To kind of get that was the potential for me. I developed all the skills, but what I really learned was to get out of the way. Sometimes you just got to get out of the way. I think if you're a parent, you're raising kids, you got to learn out at what point to get out of the way. If you're part of a community, part of a group, I think you need to quit being the leader and get out of the way. I got a lady that was hanging signs on the street, and she said, "Can I hang a sign on your tree?" And I said, "No, I don't want a sign on my tree. I got a tree because I want a tree there, not a sign." She said, "Well, I'm the cat lady." I said, "Wow, you look like just a normal woman." It's like, really? I mean, but you want to climb my tree? And she's, no, no, no. I'm famous. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wow. I'm getting to meet a famous person who wants to hang a sign on my tree." So I'm really delighted that I met a famous person. And the answer to the question is, no, you can't hang the sign on my tree. So go away. So she was upset. I guess that her goal in life is to find lost cats. So when she finds someone with a lost cat, she goes and prints millions and millions of pictures of the cat and hangs them all over the place, and then never ever comes back and takes them down. The cat's either found or is dead, but either way, she never cleans up after herself. So is that a famous person? I don't know, right? What do you think, right? I still don't want it on my tree. So it's not on my tree. I hope she found a cat. I hope they, whatever, you know. And of course, there's this whole thing is that, did the cat run away because the cat wasn't taken care of, or did the cat just get lost and confused? Or was the cat just being a cat and someone didn't close the door? I there are so many different ways to look at something. So this year in these video feeds, I'm just going to start philosophizing a little bit. So I believe in potential. So let me explain that. Just means that when you're born, you have a potential to be something. It's totally unknown. Totally. You can't speak, you can't even see for a while. Your senses are barely functional. Yes, the learning curve is amazing. That's what's really important. The learning curve is amazing when you're becoming something. So here you are becoming. You're becoming part of a culture. You're becoming part of a family. You're becoming part of a linguistic structure. A linguistic structure. What does that mean? That means that we see a symbol of some sort, and then we translate that and put a word on it, which reduces the symbol to a thing, right? Think about it. We could say tree, but if I say a maple tree or a pine tree or an oak tree, that's a reduction in the bigger term tree, which is a classification, right? So linguistic structure is to be able to define down into some small piece of arriving at exactness, which is what it is. But it doesn't make for a potential for a human. I guess it is if you're writing a book or teaching a class on tree identification. I don't know one tree from the other, but I can remember when I was a Boy Scout leader, I had to take the kids in the woods and point out what kind of trees were there. And now when I go camping in the woods, I look at the trees and I go, God, I'm looking at these trees. I can't remember any of that. It was never important to me. I'm not all that sure that it was important to any of those kids. Probably none of them could remember it either. I think it was important. It was that they could go climb the tree or run around the tree or pee on a tree or do something out there in the woods that was different and more of a potential for them to explore who they were. And that was the whole idea. It wasn't about the trees, but at least we could say, this is what we're doing. To understand the essential of a story, we have a lot of stories. We're story makers, and that's how we communicate. So we say, here's the story. This is why I'm important. I'm important because I know all the trees, or I'm important because I could teach a bunch of kids the trees. I'm not sure the kids want to know. I'm not sure it's very important. Obviously, it wasn't important to me because I didn't save it. The throat's a little gritty because uh, we've been out with for the holiday season. We had company come, and so we went and explored. Nothing very exciting, but just some of the area around. Weather was a little rainy, so we didn't go too far. A little muddy to hike the trails, but we went to some of the beaches on the river, which was kind of fun, and start to look around. And I'm thinking I found a clothing optional beach on the river, and I'm thinking, wow, uh, can't begin to imagine that would be really popular in this countryside. But it's anyway, the sign was there. There was obviously nobody on the beach. It was raining and cold, uh, but it's like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Um, I'm I'm I was talking to my friend saying I can't imagine in this kind of weather there'd be anybody coming up here to a clothing optional beach. And then we got back in the car and we were driving off, and I saw a car pull in, and a man and woman got out with their clothes, bathing clothes on, and they had their chairs and stuff, and they were packing their way out to the beach. And I was kind of amused at thinking, wow, it's raining. And I wasn't curious enough to go hike out to the beach to see if they were laying naked in the rain, but nor was I had any interest in doing that. But anyway, it was just kind of funny. Um, yeah, you see, what does that tell you? It's like that was important to someone. They went out there. I have no idea why. I don't know why that's important to someone, but it's like, but it's important to someone, right? So it's like, what's important to you? What works for you? What expands things out for you? What gets you going into potential? You became your family's child, and you became your cultural package. Um, it's yeah. I was in Thailand, and those people can take their fingers and bring it all the way around and touch their arm, and they can take it all the way back here. It's like they have all this flexibility. And I'm sitting in a community group, which is just a vacant field, and a lot of people out there doing dancing, and they're doing these hand things. And Deborah and I were out there dancing, and we weren't doing the hand things because we can't. But they were, and then I walked over, and there was a guy teaching, an older guy. When I say older, and this was Cambodia, so older was probably like 29, 20, maybe 30, probably late 20s. Not a whole lot of older people because of the Pol Pot experience in the 70s when he killed a few thousand a day. So they he was over teaching, and he said, "This is the secret to being healthy. This is the secret to being a good Thai person." He was building a philosophy on this hand movement. Hey, that's cool. I'm like, you know, that's good because I'm not a good Thai person, so I don't have to learn it. So I'm good to go. But I'm listening to him, and it's like, wow, it's kind of nice. And I'm looking around, and I said, well, the country, because it's missing a huge segment of population. That's a lot of the people who would share their wisdom is gone. So you look at that and you think, wow, hmm, I guess this is good that somebody is showing them something from their culture, but I'm not sure that that had anything to do with the dilemmas that came with Pol Pot. He had an idea of what was good for his culture and a package. He was a little, I think, demented, but then it's very, very sad that another country had to come in and save the people there, and then the other country kind of, at least in the stories, inflicted some structure, took some of their land, held charge of them for quite a period of time. And all the people that were criminal during this time never really got prosecuted. When I was there, the first person, the killings were in the 70s. I was there not that long ago. They just were decided to prosecute one of the people that were the executioners, but this executioner was on a hospital bed dying. So if they would have brought him to trial, kind of would have been pointless. So I think it still should have been done, just to close the book, so to speak, to be able to say this was not right thing to do, and it should be some accountability. But the people that made the profit on it weren't at all being held accountable. And that's so. Do you see this? I'm just telling you a story about a country. I've traveled a lot of countries. Maybe some of you have too. Every one of them has a story. And here we are in America. And we're looking, what is our story? And you look out the window and you say, well, there's a lot of change going on, right? Yeah. It's like, gosh, weather's changing, lots of homeless population. But I can remember when the war was over, World War II was over. I'm old. Well, there was a lot of homeless population because there were no houses, you know. Now there's a lot of homeless population, and I don't think most of them could afford a house. And it's probably going to be more that way for a while, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what will happen. I look out and I say, wow, this is a great time of potential. I don't know who I have to become to take advantage of this potential, not advantage of the people, not invest in a hedge fund and buy up all the houses so I can make money on rent, but take advantage of learning how to be me, whatever that is, in a different world structure, a different interface. That's the offer of life, but only here for a short time. If you just become the best there was at whatever it is that your parents wanted you to be, then that's great, you know. But if you get some diversity and you try different things, wow, you've now not only made your parents may be happy, maybe not, but at least you've enriched everything around you just because you participated for a while. Once again, you didn't have to become the best. I taught karate and had students. I taught search and rescue and had students. I taught yoga and had students. I taught religious philosophies, tons of old religious philosophies, because I had a group of people. I taught Kabbalah classes, and here I am in a people, we're all Jewish people, and I'm not, and I'm talking about the Kabbalah, and they're all looking at me like, you know, you're not even pronouncing the words correctly. They're right. I was not the expert, but we were toying with a concept. Was that the answer to something? That's what people ask me. It's like, what really works for everything? You work for everything. You go out and figure it out. You work for everything. It's like, you're not going to find on some YouTube video the secret of life. It's like, there are great stories out there. You could play one of those tracks and experiment with that. I don't think it's a non-truth. I think that the world's a phenomenon. You should try all those phenomena out. But I don't think any of them is a truth for all people. We have tried that. We have, Pol Pot tried that. He had a truth for his people. A nice story, right? Didn't work out too good. But what I saw as I travel is that, wow, they have truths and ideas for a group of people. And then I go to the next country, and everybody in that country is saying those people down there in that country are doing it all wrong, and we're doing it right. And then I go to the next country, and they're saying, oh, the people in those two countries are doing it all wrong, we're doing it right. And then I get to the next country, and they're just a total mess. And they're sitting there and saying, yeah, we got it all figured out. It's like, wow, you know. So in India, you don't have a lot of trash in front of your house because you put it in your trunk and drive across town and dump it in someone else's yard. That sounds pretty sad. and then you can go to YouTube and see the Ugly Indian series. YouTube, it's got little strips on it. I don't know how true they are, but I was in India, and yes, it was a lot of trash everywhere. uh, but predominantly, it was a lot of trash at the sacred sites, and it was, as an American, it was funny to be sitting here at a temple that is a sacred site, and if we go to cathedral in the United States, no matter what your religion is, like, it's all kind of cleaned up and it's kind of nice. There's a tourist central, but it's also whatever those elements are. I go to Peru, and I go to the cathedral Lima, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of nice. I've toured that. And then I go to India, and I go to a temple, and they're down there burning incense and praying, and it's like all respectful, and it's like wonderful. Except when they burn the incense, they just throw the trash on the ground, and got the monkeys and the rats and the dogs and the squirrels, and I I've hiked to a few temples up in the hills, and there's just trash scattered everywhere, monkeys running all over the place, throwing things around. I'm not trying to critique India, because I thought the people were amazing. I really enjoyed it. And some of the best hotels, generally speaking, were houses converted to hotels that I stayed in India that were amazing. The artwork was amazing hanging in these places. Like, that was very profound. The interaction I had with the people was very profound. I saw shows and displays down there that just were very enriching. And there was a lot of trash, all the above. And it was like, wow, I loved walking for hours in the tea region. It was so peaceful, and it was so delightful. And it was peaceful, delightful, because at the time they were having a strike, and people were trying to get more wages. So it's like, it wasn't real crowded. But all those things are what makes up our world. Like, don't go out there looking for what is going to work. What is the magic? Go out there and look for what your potential is. So this year, I'm just going to talk a little bit about those perimeters that we get lost in, trying to find the perfect answer. Forget this absolute. It just doesn't work for all people. It just doesn't. So it doesn't mean that we need to be mean or nasty. It doesn't mean that we should allow criminals to get away with being criminals. But to some degree, we're supporting, in the act of supporting autonomy for all people, we're supporting a lot of activity that is destroying the autonomy of other people. So trying to find a balance is what I'm advocating. You might not get the world to get a balance, but you really need to take a look in your life and say, wow, can I go on a trip, enjoy the food, and which is going to be very different than anything I eat here. Yes, I've eaten tarantulas, I've eaten rat, I've eaten, I don't know, fertilized eggs, duck eggs, all kinds of things, crickets, traveling the world, because that's all part of the package, is experiencing the food, experiencing the people, sitting in someone's house, talking to them, experiencing all those things, right? And yet come home and be able to say, wow, when I go out to restaurants in the last 40 or 50 years, I can see the care and quality in food. It used to be that silverware was set up with an absolute rule. We used to have a knife and a spoon and a fork were somewhere on the table. And now today it's like maybe rolled in a napkin and thrown on a table somewhere. The last time we went out to a restaurant, they just brought them and sat them in the middle of the table and said, "There's the silverware, like go for it." It's like, wow. And I'm scratching my head thinking, I'm paying $150 for a couple of hamburgers and a salad, and I got to get my own silverware, and they're constantly trying to get me to drink booze. It's like, this is interesting because where is their ideology? Where is their value structure? I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying I'm not sure if I understand that they're going to get a lot out of their value structure. I'm not advocating we go back to the old way. No, I'm advocating that we start to look at like what's important to you, what's of value to you. So I had some friends that are vegetarians, and so I did Indian food cooking for them, and they liked it. So they came back over for a second meal after a month or so, and so I last night cooked for them, and it was like nice people. And I said, so next time you guys come back over here, we're not doing Indian food, we're going to do Moroccan food. And they're kind of looking at me. I said, I can make it all vegetarian for you, not a problem. I'm not a vegetarian, but that's fine. I don't care if they're, makes no difference to me, right? So it's like I can go with it. And so I just wanted to get some diversity. And if I'm going to be feeding them and talking to them and relating to them, I want to get a little range in it. Like next time we'll do Moroccan food, and then maybe after that we'll do some Swedish food, and then maybe, I don't know, whatever. I like to cook, so I like diversity. I don't like cooking the same meal twice in a year. I like lots, so I like to play with all this, right? And my wife's a good cook, so between the two of us, we kind of manage and have fun with it. We work as a team, and yeah. Those are the things that you learn to develop in life that have real potential for you because they affect you and affect who you become and who you are. It's not a rule someone has. It's not the answer to everything. It's not some mystical, magical, whatever. If all that works for you, good. Play with it. No problem. I got tons of books on every one of those. I've probably done lectures on every one of those systems because I thought it was worth looking at, but it's not the answer. It's not the answer at all. Some weren't destructive, as Polpox was very destructive. It's not that maybe communism is good or bad. It's just that Polpox version and vision of the way to be able to make it work was not a good process. So having said all that, I'm going to shut up. I have talked for probably 40 minutes. I'm going to try to keep them shorter this year. I have a tendency to talk for hours. My seminars I used to fill usually about 7 CDs with chatting. So I'm a talker. Lots of stories. But what I believe in is potential. So the stories I picked up learning potential. Some of them worked for me, some of them didn't, but it was a fun adventure. And so I've been doing that for 80 years. The game's coming to an end at some point, and it's like, whatever. Is there more things I could do? Oh yeah, I can imagine doing a lot more things, and some of the things I've been kept from doing or is in a way of doing is because of political problems in the world, climate problems in the world. I like to go back up in the Himalayas. That was kind of fun. But, pollution, temperature, there's a lot of things so you have to keep the range open so that you have options. So you can go do something and explore and learn about how you fit into the package and what you can bring to the package and what you can walk away from the package. So that's what I call the meaning of value. So yes, I believe in you. So have fun with it this year. As we move forward, we're going to be talking in the blogs about attention, observation. It's one of the most difficult things to learn. Redundancy is easy. Attention, observation, determining the difference is really very challenging for humans. So anyway, hang on for the ride. Let's have fun, and we'll have another year, maybe, to be able to play. All right. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, go ahead and email me, chris@wizardscatch.com, and I'd be glad to answer your questions. I may do it in a blog, or I may just send you an email, or I may have to call you on the phone. All right. So it's been fun. Thank you very much.